So thanks everyone for coming for the resume tips and trends with GEICO. We have the recruiter Megan with us. She is a wonderful champion for our college and we love to have her every semester join us to share her opportunities. So Megan, I will let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Katie. So before I share my screen, just a little bit about myself. I am a college recruiter here at GEICO. This is the real background. This isn't my virtual background. It looks really good for a virtual background if it was, but I'm actually in the office today coming to you for this presentation. I am here in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I mainly recruit for our management development program and our business leadership summer internship. A little bit about myself. I've been with the company for a little over 9 years, started in auto sales, worked my way into fraud investigation underwriting, and then kind of worked my way into human resources. So it's kind of my GEICO story. But today I'm going to be talking to you about resume workshop type-esque presentation. So let me go ahead and get that up for you guys. We're going to get started here in just a second. So a resume workshop, this is going to kind of be, I'm going to kind of break down all the topics or parts of a resume and then kind of put it all together. Kind of overview why building your resume is important and things like this. So resumes are used to help market yourself and serve as an introduction between yourself and potential employers. Your resume should help an employer understand your skills, ability, and qualifications that you bring to the company. And it should also help the employer understand how these skills relate to their hiring needs. This all seems pretty straightforward, but sometimes I think a lot of students make a resume with just to have a resume, saying, I need one, I have to apply to multiple jobs, here's a resume, versus does my resume speak to the company or employer that I'm talking to or I'm looking to apply for? So there has to be a lot of intention in creating your resume. I know from personal experience, making resumes is not fun. Just like writing a cover letter, it's not fun. We don't want to do it. It's something we have to do. But I think when you understand the basic principle of why you have to have a resume that's customizable and fits these kind of bullet points, it's going to be a little bit easier to write. So kind of some things that we're going to go over is how to make it stand out. So think of your resume as an ad copy. So you want the most important information at the top. So for you guys, because you're recent, for your current college students, and you may be recent college graduates here coming up, you want your education front and center. That's going to be the most recent, the most important, followed by your experience. Next, you're going to want to focus on your accomplishments. We're going to kind of go into this a little bit more, but utilizing those power verbs, things like that. There's a huge list in the career services guide, as well as you can Google resume power verbs. There's tons of different lists that are available. So next, you'll want to quantify your success. This is super important. And I think this is where a lot of students kind of miss the mark on their resume and helping it stand out. Quantifying your success. Numbers jump off the page. You need to put in something that shows that you worked with a large group of people, or you've moved a set of data, or you've increased something by a certain percentage. That stands out because, as you all know, recruiters only look at your resume for maybe a minute, if that, if you're lucky. And so those numbers are what's jumping off to us. When I see somebody that's a 25% on someone's resume, I'm now reading that bullet point, understanding what that 25% was, or a group of 8 people. What did they do with that 8 people? I'm reading that bullet point. So you want to be able to quantify your success. Last but not least, this is a yes and no type of situation. I think this is depending on how much room you have on your resume. Highlight awards, honors, and recognition. If you have space and there's some really great honors, awards, and recognition that you want to highlight that pertains to the job in which you're applying for, include it on the resume. If it does not pertain to the job you're applying for, it is not needed on your resume. So let's say you're applying to a leadership development program, but you have an award in, I don't know, fastest, or some sort of honor and award. I can't think, my brain is escaping me on this Monday. but it doesn't pertain to that leadership position or qualities that they're looking for, I would not include that on your resume. Also, if you don't have the space on your resume for this, don't feel like you're missing out on not having it. It's okay if you don't have this on your resume. This is just something that can be in addition to your resume. So formatting basics, one page only. If you have a sentence, that figure out how we can get it on that one page. One, it makes it easier for us as recruiters to read, especially when we're in person reading your resumes. It makes it a lot easier. So we want to make sure we keep it at one page. Margins, it's recommended for it to be a 1-inch margin, but you can minimize it and make it the narrow margin so you can kind of widen it to make more space. Totally acceptable. Please keep your font very specific, very general, Times New Roman, Arial, very professional. No Cosmic Sans, cursive, nothing crazy. You want to make sure it's readable and the hiring system that you're uploading it to can read it. That's also a very important thing as well. Spacing, maintain consistency throughout. I'm a huge stickler on this. I want to make sure everything is spaced out properly. There's no extra space, or that extra space could be taking up room from something that you want to add, but you can't because you have too much space somewhere. So making sure your spacing is the same. I always say to start out with a blank document and just type it all out. Just write it all out and then go from there, because when you start messing with a template, it gets a little crazy and it can get really frustrating trying to edit the template or move things around. And plus, it's easier to kind of get all your thoughts and everything down on a page, and then you slowly start putting it into a template if you choose to use one, or editing it to make it look more like a resume. Last but not least, bullet points. I'm going to go over this a little bit more in detail as well. Begin with an action verb and keep all 1 to 2 lines in length. Your bullet points should not be paragraphs. Your bullet points should be quick, brief action items on stuff that you've done. So I'm always a stickler that if you have 3 bullet points for everything, and then you have 4 or 5 bullet points for some things, choose. Do you want 3 bullet points all the way down, 4 bullet points all the way down, or 5? Keep it consistent throughout the same. I know some experiences we didn't spend as much time in as others, which is fine. So maybe you're like, okay, I know I have 5 here, but what can I cut? Because most of the time, most jobs can be summed up in about, most experiences can be summed up between 3 to 4 bullet points if you're good at putting it in a very structured sentence. I think bullet points in those sentences where students get hung up a lot because they're like, but I need to include this. And so I normally, when I ask students, when I'm helping them and I read their bullet points, I ask, what are you trying to convey? What are you trying to tell me in this sentence? And if they say, well, this, and I'm like, okay, but you're explaining that in the other bullet point. So what is this bullet point doing? So that's a good thing to ask yourself is, what am I trying to convey with all these bullet points? If it's covering this roughly same experiences or same skill sets throughout all your bullet points, then it's definitely time to condense those bullet points and maybe add some more unique skill sets that you've learned from that experience. So the content of your resume. So objective statement. This is always a hot topic amongst recruiters if you've ever attended a resume panel. I am not a fan of an objective statement, but I always cover it because I like to cover all sides of everything. So I'm not a fan of objective statement. If you choose to have one, I think that's fine as well. So when you do have an objective statement, make sure it's a concise statement focusing on the type of position in which you are seeking. This is the most important thing. I don't prefer objective statements because it's the easiest way for a student to not get forward in the next step of the hiring process. Because they may apply for a leadership development program, but their objective says they're looking for an IT analyst role. It's not what I'm applying. That's not what I'm looking to hire for. So right off the bat, I can already tell they're not paying attention to detail, and this isn't the job they really want. So that's why I always say no objective statement. It's the quickest way to get yourself in kind of a sticky situation a little bit. So If you choose to have one, make sure you update it per job you apply for, unless you make it a very broad general statement and say you're looking to seek a full-time position in X, Y, and Z fields, and that covers a broad general statement. You don't really have to change it. But if you have a specific one, make sure you're changing it per each job that you apply for. That's very important. So education, list degrees in order with the most recent first. So if any of you have your master's or PhD, you'd want to list that first, and then in succession, the other degrees after. Excuse me. In your education, you want your minor, your area of concentration. So you guys who are going to the College of Liberal Arts probably have degrees in, you're getting degrees in all different topics or categories. So making sure that you're being very clear in that. So, I believe it's Pennsylvania State University, bachelor's of science, liberal arts, / whatever your major / minor is. And then GPA is always a hot topic as well. I think your GPA is normally off to the side. If I believe when I look at a Penn State resume, it's normally under the University Park address when students do it. And so I would say if your GPA is below a 3.0, I wouldn't recommend putting it on your resume. If it's above a 3.0 or higher, you can definitely go ahead and put it on your resume. Now, let's say something's happened and you have a 2.9. You used to be at a 3.0 and you have a 2.9 now, and something's happened. I think that's a great chance for you to explain that in your cover letter. And, whether it be personal or not, I think you have to use your discretion, or if it's a conversation you have with a recruiter when you meet with them one-on-one to talk about that. But we do understand that situations happen. And, most companies are generally sometimes willing to work with that situation, depending on what it is, or they may not be. It just depends on the company. But I think it's also a good chance to maybe touch on that in your cover letter if you would like. You always want to include honors. Remember, we kind of touched on this a little bit, the honors and achievements. If you have space, you can go ahead and include it in. If you studied abroad, again, if you have space, you can go ahead and include it in. Relevant courses, again, if you have space. Now, if you're applying for a more technical based job where you have your more IT, your data side of jobs, yes, your relevant courses do need to be put in there because of this skill set. But if you're applying for a job that's more kind of a general position or an entry-level position that doesn't require those hard skills, you don't necessarily need to have those relevant core courses or relevant classes. They're not 100% necessary. So here's some examples, just roughly. So this is like her entry. This is Kelly Smith, everybody. This is her top of her resume is right here. So she's got a phone number, an email, and her LinkedIn. So if you're going to put your phone number, make sure it's a phone number that you answer all the time and your voicemail is professional. If it's your email address, make sure it's an email that you check all the time. The email address that's on your resume should be the same email address that you put in your application. Should not be different. It's completely up to you whether or not you want to put your LinkedIn on there. I don't have a preference either or, to be honest with you. I don't think most employers do for that sense. But I would recommend maybe like your address, or if you're looking to stay in a certain place, put that address on there. But if you're open to relocation, I would kind of leave the address open and don't necessarily need it. Touching on the experience a little bit, she's put her Bachelor of Arts. She put the university at the bottom. I've also seen some people put the university to the right of it, all the way on the other side kind of the page to kind of create more space, which is definitely an option as well. And then she's got her relevant coursework, which I think is completely fine. And her honors, she graduated magna cum laude, which could also be put in under her degree. It doesn't really have to be a separate, it could go follow under her degree, but this is just an example of a simple setup that you could have for the beginning part of your resume. Excuse me. So the contents of your resume, we're going to kind of go touch on this a little bit more. So this is the experience point. This is a lot of the big touching points for students. So you want to give details of your accomplishments and responsibilities. Numbers make strong statements and can enhance your credibility. Like we said, you want to quantify it. Each job title should have 3 to 5 bullet points. Remember, like I said, 3 to 5. But if some only have 3, some only have 4, some have 5, one has 2, you need to figure out if you're going to only have 2 throughout all of them or 3 throughout all of them. 1, it's going to stay consistent, and 2, it's going to work better with your spacing and give you more space. So 3 parts of a strong bullet point should have an action verb, a quantifiable point, and a specific and relevant job duty. I've got some examples on the next page that are color coded to match the colors that I have here. So we'll kind of go over those here in just a moment as well. Skills, technology-based or computer skills, foreign language knowledge, and other field-specific skills sets and certifications are appropriate to include. I think this is very important based on the job in which you're applying for. If you are applying for a position that doesn't require foreign language knowledge, I don't think it's necessarily known that you should put that on your resume. If you could maybe fill it in with something else, right? A resume should be interchangeable, right? So one job application resume should not match another job application resume unless they're for the exact same job at different companies. Generally, that's never the case. The exact same job, they have different requirements or different experience requirements. And so the resume should be a little bit different. But again, your resume needs to be interchangeable. It's not a one size fits all. You have to make it fit to base off the position in which you're applying for. Again, activities, college, community, and professional, whether that may be, inside while you're at school, maybe you've worked with Thon, or maybe you've done some community outreach, or maybe you do some, you do things when you're at home with your community or professionally. That's all relevant and can go on your resume. And again, honor and awards if it fits and if it fits the role in which you're applying for. So some examples, color coded them a little bit to match our action verb, our specific and relevant job duty, and our quantifiable point. So the first one, the skill is providing customer service. And the experience was a supporter. So the person's action verb was demonstrated. Perfect. Starts every sentence with that. If you can see every example, there's green at the beginning of every sentence because every bullet point should start with an action verb. So next would be customer service skill. If we check here, that's a specific and relevant job duty, right? Customer service skill through engagement with 15 to 30 customers per shift in a fast-paced environment. They've quantified it. This person has quantified it. They've told me what skill they're quantifying and how they did it in their bullet point. Less than 10 words, super easy. I say super easy. Does take some practice, but if you follow those 3 things, it's going to help you. Now, I'm not saying it has to be in this specific order: action verb, quantifiable point, specific and relevant job duty. As you can see, they're all pretty much kind of a little bit out of order, except the one thing is that there is an action verb at the end, at the beginning of every sentence. So the next one, leading and coordinating tasks. The experience was a group project for this person. So their action verb is led. Perfect, I did it right in the sentence. Led a team of 3, that's their quantifiable number, through a semester-long project. That's the skill. It was a semester-long group project. The skill that they're looking to fill this bullet point for is lead and coordinating tasks. So they worked through a semester-long project that required delegating weekly tasks, organizing and facilitating 8 meetings, and presenting completed project to faculty and students. Perfect. They even quantified it twice for me. They told me how many meetings they had, and they told me how many people were on that team. So there are these 3 things. They're super small, but when you do it, your bullet point has a huge impact. Next would be promoting and working in a team. First word, collaborated. Again, super powerful action verb there, with a marketing committee of 5 members. They're quantifying it for me, or they're telling me what the Action is promoting and working in a team, committee of 5 members, to promote fundraising events by creating eye-catching posters using Photoshop and tabling in populated locations to increase attendance by 25%. Now that they've told me they've quantified it and their actions have increased overall attendance by 25%. Pretty awesome. Says to me that they're very capable and exceed expectations in a sense of working with a team and able to collaborate to produce a increase in a metric. That's what I see when I read this. Again, action verb, skill, quantifiable result. These things are so important when writing your resume. If you stick to these 3 things and the question, what am I trying to convey? It's going to help you write your resume and help your resume be more impactful without having to go in great detail about the skills that you're putting on your resume. So I'm going to leave this up for a little bit. It is a resume checklist. So is your contact information accurate? We already talked about this. Can I reach you at the number you put on there? If I email you at that email address, will you get that email? Does your resume not include details like headshots or sensitive or personal information? Please do not put your photo on your resume. The hiring process is meant to be compliant with certain guidelines, and we are unable to have pictures and things like that. So please do not put your picture or headshot or anything fancy or anything sensitive on your resume. Keep it the kiss it method. Keep it simple, Sally. Plain and simple, black font, regular paper, nothing over the top. I know sometimes with graphic design students, they tend to put their portfolio on there. Again, completely fine. I've seen students with a QR code that links to their portfolio. I think that's a great idea. It's a great option to have. So people do get creative and I give them kudos for that, but just don't put your photo on there. Does your resume fit in 1 page? Is your information easy to read? So fonts are more than 10 points or size wise, and sections don't look too crowded, right? If you follow the bullet point guidelines, your sections won't look too crowded because you're following a sentence structure. Now, let's say you look at it and you're like, man, there's a lot going on here. Maybe you need to ask yourself, where can I condense? And maybe 4 bullet points is too much. Maybe I need to just stick to 3. And what can I add to the 3 that I already have? Is the design of your resume appropriate for the position you're applying for? Agree, 110%. Again, with those graphic design or those intricate type UX, UGI positions and things like that, I know they tend to put like the graphics on the side of their resume with the bars of skill sets. I'm completely fine with that. If you're applying for those positions, they may be okay with that. For us, in the positions I apply for, sometimes the skill sets, that graphic of a skill set doesn't necessarily go as far as the actual bullet point. So I think it all depends in kind of the position you're applying for. I have a friend who works in New York City. She works in the PR fashion industry. And I helped her with her resume, completely out of my realm, but I'm like, what do those resumes normally look like? And once I knew what they normally look like, I could help her write hers because it's not what I'm used to seeing, right? I needed to help learn her how to write her style because every position is different, right? The government even has a different set of resume, like different type of resume setup than a general entry-level business position. So it all just depends on the position you're applying for. And if you're not sure what the resume should look like, ask the recruiter. They might be able to help you kind of guide you and give you some tips on how to make your resume more fitted or suited for the position you're applying for. Did you include all relevant sections in your resume? Do you have your experience? Do you have leadership? Do you have space for honors? Do you have space for activities? Is the stuff on there relevant to the job that you're applying for? Got to ask yourself that. Did you include quantified achievements in your work experience section? Again, if you stick to the three bullet point rule, action verb, quantifiable, and a direct skill, that's going to check itself. But I can't say this enough, quantify your results. And if you're not sure what that looks like, go to career services and be like, I don't have quantifiable results. And they'll be like, okay, we'll find some. Because I guarantee you probably do. We just have to change the wording and kind of make it a little bit fancier, zhuzh it up, as they say, to help you get that quantifiable. Does your resume address the requirements stated in the job ad? Did you even look at the job ad? That's the question. Did you look at the job ad, the job listing, and see what it's asking for? Does your resume match up with that? I think it's a great idea to put the job experience that the position's hiring for and your resume up side by side and say, hey, there's some keywords in here. I'm going to add those into my resume. I think that's a great idea. Not overkill. Maybe 3 or 4 keywords, because that hiring system is picking up on those keywords. But you also want to make sure, maybe I need to alter or update or change some of the experiences I have listed to better match what they're looking for, right? You have the experience, but the way it's listed on your resume doesn't necessarily 100% line up with what they're looking for. So you may have to change the wording around. I know, again, it's more time consuming. I know this, but that's how you ensure that you are applying, one, to a position that you know that you're 100% that you're qualified for, but also it's going to give you more confidence when you go into that first interview, because you've done the work. You've looked at the job, you've compared it to your resume, and you're like, yep, I've got this. Yep, I've got this. Awesome. It gives you that extra boost that you didn't know that you may need in that interview process. Is your resume free of typos and grammatical errors? I think I've said this before. Go to career services, have them review it. I know we have our parents, we love them so much, but I don't recommend having them review a resume unless they're going to be 100% honest with you. And then even then, if you have your parents look at them, have your roommate, have career services. I would say have at least 5 people look at your resume before you finalize it and say, this is the shell I'm going to work off of from every other job application. Because 1 or 2 people may look at it, but they may not notice certain things that other people do. Normally when I do a resume review, if someone brings me almost a flawless resume, I'm going to try to find something to give them feedback on, right? Or I'm going to say, hey, this is really great. Maybe you want to think about this, this, and this, or maybe I only have one thing to give them. But again, a resume is a working document. So anytime you change it or update it or add something, have somebody review it. Have somebody look at it to make sure it makes sense. Like I said, a minimum of maybe 5 people should look at your resume to give you feedback and updates. Is all of your information clearly formatted and professional? Does it look good? Would you be okay giving this to a CEO of a big company that came to a career fair? Would you be confident in giving them that resume? Is it for professional and is it formatted? Got to ask yourself those questions. I think this is a good checklist for students to have. Again, with those 3 bullet points as well, right? The structure of the bullet point, the action verb, quantifiable point, and specific and relevant job duty. Last but not least, I know we kind of touched on these. Proofread your resume, no pictures, keep it professional, utilize your career center. That's kind of the biggest takeaway I have for you guys. So I'm going to kind of leave it open right now for questions.
Thank you, Megan, so much. I really appreciate it. It was a great message. So for the students online, do you have any questions for Megan? You're welcome to ask yourself or put in the chat.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
I asked a quick question under the direct message, but I can just repeat it. As far as say, like I'm applying for an internship, how do you feel about, because I'm a junior, so I have very limited internship experience. I have 1 prior internship. How do you feel about listing job experience that's not necessarily in the field, but still provided me communication skills or some other worthwhile skill to list?
I think that's completely fine. just kind of like how I said, take the job listing and your resume and say, okay, if the job listing says demonstrate, effective communication or however they word it, say what on my resume does that. And being a server, that conveys it a lot. A lot of times you have to upsell, you have to convince customers, you have to deal with upset customers, big, like large groups, big tables, things like that. So I think it's all in kind of how you quantify that. So if you say, demonstrated customer service or communication by, on average dealing with X amount of customers at restaurant with a successful, I'm really just going off the top of my head right now. But something along those lines, you can definitely kind of tie that into the communication. And I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of times you can simple Google, like how to communication skills, resume examples. That's going to kind of give you a lot of like keywords to kind of pull from, and then you'll be able to kind of put like a bullet point together as well. So, that kind of helps me when I'm stuck. I'm like, I know what I want to say, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'll just Google, that what I'm trying to convey, resume examples, and you'll get a ton. And you can just kind of filter through those, because once you get that basic sentence structure and you go to career services or whoever you have review your resume, they're going to make the sentence structure better, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Thank you. That's perfect.
I think, Rachel, you said it yourself, it's all good experience. It's all transferable. There's a way to connect it. I review a lot, just like Megan, I review a lot of resumes every year. And so often I hear that, they tell me what they did and no relationship to what they would be doing in this role. So we'll keep with the server, filled water glasses and, cleaned up tables. I'd rather hear that as Megan was saying, upsold, conflict resolution, training of teammates, leader on shift, those kind of things to keep going. So make sure you're your best marketer in that situation. I have a question in the chat. I'm just going to ask real quick. If I have no work and only volunteer experience, how should I format that on my resume?
So that's a good question. Volunteer experience is always a tricky line. But I think you can make it a section in your resume. I know how we say like experience, like professional, like I've seen a lot of people do like professional experience and then leadership experience and then volunteer experience. So if it's just volunteer experience, maybe you just put professional experience, because volunteering is a professional aspect, whether it be in the community or with a business. So you can just put experience or professional experience, however you want to title that. And I would list it just like you would a job. You would list the company, put the dates that you worked for the volunteer experience, the location, and then bullet point your leadership experience, because just like we were saying about the server, those skills are still transferable. It's all in how you word it. And I think a lot of times students don't realize when you take the time to sit down and compare your resume and break out your skills and how they are transferable to jobs, it's giving you this hidden confidence that you didn't, not that you didn't already have, but now when you get a call from that employer that says, hey, we want to do an interview, you're already like 25% prepared for that interview because you took the extra 10 minutes to look at your resume and do it a little bit differently. So you may not even notice it, but it's this, I've noticed it more when students when I talk to certain students that are like, yeah, I actually kind of compared my resume a little bit and wanted to apply for the job. They have that extra boost of confidence when it comes to interviewing time. So again, I would treat your volunteer experience just like any other work experience that you have and really tie the experience to the jobs. Yes.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for doing this. This is really helpful.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm a Chinese national and I'm kind of bicultural. I'm kind of a third culture kid. And this is really helpful, but can you give more concrete example in terms of what you mean by when you struggle for finding a right wording of what you want to say on the resume? Are there like specific things that recruiters look for?
Like in terms of like experience or examples or kind of
The actual bullet point.
Like the actual, is
Yeah,
that your,
we can go with bullet points under experience because I always struggle to find the right words for what I want to say.
it is a job. It is hard. I'm not gonna lie. I think when I was helping my friend write her resume, it took us like 2 hours to do it because her industry is completely different than what I'm used to. So I kept having to ask her, like, what are you trying to tell me? Like, what are you trying? If I was somebody who had no knowledge of your experience, what are you trying to tell me? So that's what I would approach it with, is that if somebody who was very new to the role or didn't have as much experience in the role, how would I explain to them that I meet this skill set in the most simplest way possible, but being as direct as possible, if that makes sense. So you want to be able to tell them what you did in the most efficient way possible. And when I struggle to find the words, I generally literally will just Google, like we said, communication resume examples. Maybe not communication, but like authentic, get a lot of websites that pop up. There's a few that I really like that give me a lot of good examples, but normally I'll just try to like kind of read the different examples and then I kind of start to formulate a sentence. I also think saying the sentence, saying the bullet point out loud. So, like, okay, you demonstrated this, and this by, ooh, I need a new word, right? So like you might look a little crazy talking to yourself, but when you read the sentence, that bullet point out loud, it's going to help you figure out, okay, this sentence is good, but it could be better. So what other words or what can I change in and out of it? So that's generally when I will go to Google to kind of look for different sentence structures on maybe how other people have chosen to word the experience. But it's all right. So you've got to think of it like that main question. What am I trying to convey in this bullet point? What am I trying to tell somebody? Somebody who's brand new to the position, who's like, yep, this is exactly what we're looking for. This is what they told me to look for in training. This is what I need to know. That's what you need to ask yourself. What am I trying to convey? What do I want them to know? That's the biggest question I think you need to ask yourself.
I think the next thing is, what do you want them to know, but what do they want to know? So somebody in our office alludes to a job description as the recipe. You need all parts of that to be the ideal candidate. And these analogies aren't always helpful, but my suggestion, Megan said this, is go through the job description first and highlight the keywords, and then start with those keywords and think, what have I done in my experiences to meet these keywords that I want to then share? Add the quantitative information, add the action verbs, and go from there. Megan had alluded to this at the beginning of the session with those list of action verbs in the Penn State Career Guide. I threw that link in the chat. I also added EPIC, which is within the College of the Liberal Arts. It's an office that supports international students, and they do really awesome workshops on specific language barriers and writing resumes and interviewing and understanding job descriptions, because what we find obviously is from country to country, resumes look a lot different, and presenting yourself in an interview is a lot different. Even myself, I'm uncomfortable with what feels like bragging sometimes in an interview, but understanding that process of what to present to how to present yourself. So I would also share that EPIC is, I've attended a couple of their events this year to be a better career counselor. So I would suggest those to anyone who's interested.
To kind of bounce off of what Katie was saying, when you look at the job description and you think about your experience, sometimes you don't always have to think about your experience in the traditional sense. What classes have I taken? What have I done on campus? Think outside the box. What have I done? What has my summer job been? Or what did I have done in the community outreach? Like, have I taken those leadership roles? So I think sometimes we get so caught up in like, well, I work a part-time job, I do this, but I don't really have anything else outside of that. But you do. You just kind of have to like let yourself realize that every experience that you've had has gotten you this far and gotten you to this point and taught you something. Not necessarily that you have to put every experience on your resume, but it helps you think about not the traditional, okay, this is my coursework. This is what I've learned from my coursework. This is what I've learned from, you know, being in this sorority or this fraternity. This is what I've learned from doing thon. No, but what have I done at home? What have I done during the summer? You know, think about those things, especially, and I know COVID, think about what you did during COVID. What did you do with that time? Not saying that you have to show anything for that time, because we all were going through huge changes in our lives for that point. But you know, some employers may say like, hey, how did you spend your time during COVID? Or like, what did you do? Obviously, we know you were in classes, but during the summer and things like that. And we know that not all of you may have an internship because of COVID. So what did you do instead? If you took advantage of the summer and traveled or whatever, you know, that might be a conversation. But think about those experiences outside the standard experiences.
Anyone else have any other questions? Megan and I can talk about this a lot.
Thank you. That was really helpful, because a lot of the things I've been taught here by career services, it's not necessarily standard for the Chinese interviewing process. And I've been
Right.
through a lot of that.
Right.
So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
There's also a resource in Nittany Lion Careers. If you log into your account and scroll down on the right side, there's a quick links little box, and one of the links says Going Global. Penn State pays to have access to that website, so you do need to get to it through Nittany Lion Careers, but it opens up, you can then look at career guides per country. So it demonstrates what a resume may look like in Germany as opposed to England, you know, so it helps. It also helps to see H-1 visas and what companies have given them previously, and you know, who can you be looking at now. So another great resource there. Well, if there isn't any further questions, I think one thing I did want to reiterate is the template piece. I have been educating myself a little bit more on application tracking systems. I know GEICO does not use them yet, but would really say to stay away from a template when it comes to the idea that a company may be scanning your resume before someone's seeing it. Many of those template formats will not make it through. You know, you all are welcome to meet with us one-on-one to review any of that and talk about your resume. So with that, thank you so much, Megan. We really appreciate your time, and I will be talking to you soon for spring.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I enjoyed this, and hopefully it was very informational. And if you guys want me to look at your resume, I'm more than happy to. Katie has my contact information, so she can kind of, and I will put my email address in the chat for everybody if they'd like. And so if you want me to have a look at it, I can. But other than that, thanks so much for having me, and I will talk to you guys later.
Thank you.